Well, hey there. It's Monday. Oh, sorry for shaking the table already. It's Monday and time for Monday Mastery. And we're live and here to talk about dating and relationships and your questions. And today's question that I posed earlier today was is there one particular characteristic or trait that that is more important than any other trait in finding an extraordinary relationship. Hey, Addie, thanks for joining in. Glad to see you're here. Um, and it's interesting, and I probably should wait for a couple of minutes to dive in, but I had a gentleman, and he responded to the Facebook notice, and he said that sexual compatibility checklist was the most important thing. And we had a couple of messages back and forth, but I haven't had a chance to check his see if he's responded lately. But let's see. Addie says no, not just one for me. Trust and communication. Those are great. Those are great characteristics to be looking for. So, and for those, there's a couple of you on here already. So, if anybody else has a comment, please chime in and let me know what you think. If there's any one specific thing that trumps everything else in a relationship, or in an extraordinary relationship, and then I'll chip in my 2 cents in a little bit also. So, anyway, I hope you all have had a great week or a great weekend, and we're starting off the week a little chilly up here in northern Wisconsin, and I'm just looking at the lake, and it's starting to calm down a little bit. We've had northeasterly winds, so that's kept it down. But we're supposed to be up in the 80s in a day or so, and I know most of you everywhere else have been in the 80s, 90s, and 100s, but I think we got up to 61 or 62 today. So anyway. Hey, Paul, thanks for joining in. Barbara, glad you're here. Uh, and Addie says it's hot hot as Hades. Yeah, I understand. And Barbara says, for me, it's their relationship with God. There you go. That's a good one. And I think that, and I think, um, in my opinion, it's more than just one thing. It's I think it's a combination. It has to be a combination of things. You can have some great characteristics, but like last week's conversation was on, is love enough to sustain a relationship? And we determined pretty much no. You have to have more. You have to have more of a connection, and hey, Jacqueline, thanks for joining in. And she's in 94 degrees here in Charlotte, North Carolina. Yeah, it's warm everywhere except here. And Paul says two of mine are loving and kind, and those I think are two. I'm guessing, Paul, those are two of your must-haves, but I'm also guessing that that's not all that's involved with a strong relationship for you, and and I think there has to be a firm foundation. And the gentleman I referred to at the a few minutes ago, for those of you that may have just tuned in, when I posted today's topic, I had a gentleman post that said that a sexual compatibility checklist because of infidelity and there was something else, and I don't recall exactly offhand, but I challenged him to see if the sexual compatibility or lack thereof and the infidelity in a relationship was a an outcropping of a lack of connection in the intellectual, spiritual, and emotional categories. And I have, and as I said earlier, I haven't had a chance to, or I haven't seen a response from him yet. Paul says, "No, strong faith in the Lord is my number one." There you go. That's and that's part of the spiritual connection. But as you date, I think you have to build on a strong foundation, and to me, that strong foundation is built on an intellectual connection, a spiritual connection, an emotional connection, and the physical connection. So they're all part of the overall picture, and I'm not sure that you can. In fact, I'm confident that you can't have a relationship, an extraordinary relationship, without all four, because it's like the four legs of a table. If the intellectual, spiritual, emotional, and physical connections are those legs, and they support the table. You take just one away, and what happens? That table becomes instantly unstable. And hey, Teresa, thanks for joining in. Sheila, thank you. Glad to see you're here. Sheila says physical and emotional compatibility, love, friendship, shared values and goals, companionship, and happiness. Those are all great, and yeah, I agree with all of that, Sheila. The physical and emotional compatibility are two of the cornerstones that I'm sharing right now, and the love and friendship. I would lump into the emotional connection, and then shared values and goals, companionship, and happiness. I would lump into the intellectual, the intellectual cornerstone. And my point here is that without these firm foundation, or without all four of them in a relationship, it's hard to have stability. As I started to say, you take just one component away, and the table instantly, or one leg, the table instantly becomes unstable. Now, I could take, you can take three legs away, and the gentleman that had emailed or had commented on today's announcement, subject announcement, talked about sex, and it sounded to me, and I haven't been able to confirm it, but to me it sounds like his primary interest in a relationship is sex, and we all could build a relationship solely on sex, but that's only one leg, and I could balance that table for a short amount of time on just that one leg, or that one cornerstone. But what happens when there's the first little disturbance, the first little breath of air that comes along? That table's going to come crashing down, or going to fall over, and consequently, it's not sufficient to maintain a healthy long-term relationship. And we could balance, we could do that with any leg, not just sexual attraction or sex. We can do that with the intellectual connection. If intellectual connection is all that you have, there's no love, there's no spiritual connection, there's no physical connection, the best you're going to be is friends. And the same thing with spiritual and emotional. You can love somebody, but if you don't have an intellectual and a spiritual and a physical connection, it's just there's going to be something missing, and you're going to you're going to be feeling that lack. Now, in the beginning, it may all be rainbows, unicorns, and butterflies. But over time, and it may be as little as a few months or a few years, you're going to sense that there's something missing. You're not satisfied, and to the point that the gentleman brought up earlier is infidelity. Because when things, and this is my belief, I'm not saying this is gospel, but my belief, in conversations with many people that have had affairs or have been cheated on, there was something wrong at home. There wasn't a full connection there. And let's see. Let me see. The comments are coming in fast and furious here. Teresa says, "Well, that would work if you screwed up and you would know how to get out of trouble with your partner." I'm kidding. And then she says, talking about the sex part. Yeah, and and the sex is important to most people. It's an important part of the equation, but it's not the whole part. And the sex part can be so much better when you have the connections of when you can wake up next to somebody and have a conversation in the morning. And Paul says, in a dating relationship, how soon can you discover if you have those four connections? Well, Paul, that's an awesome question, and we will cover that. There's almost an entire chapter devoted to that, or a module devoted to that in Dating Made Simple Academy. So we will be going over this specifically, but for today. You can start telling that relatively quickly. You can, if you can start having conversations about literally anything and everything, and there's very little, as I call it, dead air, where there's very little quiet. The conversations just flow. You have common morals and values, and this is all part of the intellectual connection. You've got good communication, and you share common interests, and not all your interests are going to be the same, but you can start finding these things out relatively quickly. And if there are some diverse interests, you may say, you'll never catch me getting into that activity. But my experience tells me that don't say that, because as your relationship grows, if it is an extraordinary relationship, you're going to take an active interest in your partner's activities, or your partner's hobbies or interests, just because it's their passion. And while it may not become your passion, you take more than a passing interest in it, because it's what makes them happy. Then it's relatively easy to start determining a spiritual connection. Going to church together and being comfortable in the same church. And I do believe that in a relationship you have to check out churches together. If one says I'm going here and one says I'm going there, that's not a good connection. There has to be a common searching of a church that's suitable for both of you. And I just went through that and I've talked to many couples that while they're both Christian, one went to Catholic church, one went to Protestant church. And there are variations in the Protestant church that may not be compatible with each other. So those are things that you can start determining relatively quickly. The emotional connection, that will develop generally over time. You have to be careful that the early connection, that you feel the excitement, the butterflies, the tingly toes, or the wobbly knees, though that's going to be attributed more to infatuation. And so you have to recognize that stuff will eventually diminish, and then it's the rest of the connection. You'll be able to tell if you're in love with somebody or not, and vice versa. And then obviously the physical connection, that's important, and it is as and not just from a sexual standpoint, but from a being physically attracted to each other. Now, it's not necessarily that you will find a physical attraction initially. Sometimes you'll think that, yeah, this isn't going to work, but as you get to know somebody, you start to see them and get to know them on a deeper level, and they naturally become more attractive to you. So it takes a little bit of time, Paul, but a lot of the basics can be figured out in a relatively short period of time. Addie says, it really upsets me that men seem to place so much importance on the sexual part of a relationship. At least the men I have dated previously did. And, Addie, you're right. And guys in general, number one, we're more visual people, but we live in a society that has not taught abstinence since the early 60s. Our culture has migrated from waiting to an immediate gratification society, and it's we can track that back to the TV dinners, where mom didn't have to cook, and you just popped a TV dinner in the oven, and for 20 minutes, and you're ready to go. But you are right, and when you find the right guy, he will be willing to wait. And if he's not willing to wait, Addie, then it may be time to move on. And until he can get his hormones under control, and he's just not an emotionally mature guy. And unfortunately, there are a lot of guys out there that are that way. And hey, Shar, thanks for joining in. Glad to see you're here. And then Addie says again, sex is important, but that can come last, in my opinion. And it should. And I totally agree. That should be in theory, that should be left for marriage, the icing on the cake, so to speak. And what you'll find is that when you wait, when you develop your intellectual, spiritual, and emotional connections, the physical connection will be much, much stronger in the long run. And even if there are things that, and you can talk about your sexual preferences, things that you enjoy, things that are off limits, and you just have to be careful to not act on those things while you're talking about them, because it can get so crazy that you can get so aroused in those conversations. But you can have general conversations where you can share those things in advance to know, to make sure that there's going to be some compatibility, or a high level of compatibility. And it's I'm sorry, I just got distracted. So the longer you, and studies show, the longer you wait, the stronger your relationship will be. And but statistics also show that 80% of couples will end up in bed on or before the eighth date. And while you'll know a little bit, you barely know. You'll barely know each other intellectually, spiritually, and emotionally. And Teresa says, how come I can't see everybody? I'm not sure, Teresa. I don't know which site you're watching on, whether you're on my personal page or on my business page, but I don't know. That one I'll have to figure out. And she says, I don't want that stuff to ever go away. Um, oh, the butterflies and excitement. Well, there's the reality is that a lot of that will go away, Teresa. And part of the reason is because you get into your daily routine. You start living life together. You develop routines together, your daily routines. Get up, go to work, and come home, have dinner, and do housework, do yard work, do whatever it is. Take care of kids, or there are still activities that you can do. It's having date night at least once a month, preferably once a week, where you spend time just relaxing together and spending quality time together. And those are things that you can spend time looking forward to. But I don't want to burst anyone's bubble, but to have the butterflies and the tingly toes and the wobbly knees, I don't think that will last forever. That is again part of the infatuation, and studies show that infatuation will last up to around 24 months, 2 years, plus or minus a little bit. The more experienced at dating you are, it may diminish over time. It may diminish sooner, just based on your experience. And I'm getting way behind here. Let's see. Let me get caught up. Paul says, I have a woman friend that says the thing is as says this. I'm assuming the same thing as Addie. I think respect is a big key here. Absolutely, and Paul, it's one of those things that and here's what it boils down to. I think for most of us is that when you start to get to know each other, you start holding hands. Holding hands leads to hugging. Hugging leads to kissing, and kissing leads to everything else. So you have to be very careful about how passionately you kiss. I, and you can laugh at me, but think about it. The last time you kissed someone passionately, the hormones started raging, and I can almost guarantee you both were getting aroused, and unless you are really strong in nature, the clothes start to come off, and if alcohol's involved in any way, shape, or form, your ability to resist has gone down dramatically. So you just have to be careful, and again, Paul, being respectful of your lady friend, that will cause her to have more respect for you, and make you more attractive in her eyes. And Terry says, I think respect is very important. Yes, ma'am, I agree. And Teresa says, well, if you have sex first, it's like the excitement and fun is used up, and it's like the guy does not want you, or is interested in you in anymore. Well, and there are those one hit wonders, and that's why you always want to wait to have sex. You don't want to have sex on the first date or on the first couple of dates. There are, for those of you that have not experienced it, there's the thing called the 3 date or the 5 date rule, which means that by the third or the fifth date, the guy wants to be in bed with you. He's wined and dined you, and he's expecting something in return. That's a guy that needs to be dumped quickly, and because that's all he's interested in is sex, and that's not what a healthy relationship is built on. And if it's on the first date, it really becomes problematic. Statistically, you are a one night stand at that point, and and the other aspect, there are some biological things that after men and women respond to sex differently. Women tend to start you start developing an emotional connection to a guy, even at even though it's a very high level. And guys tend to retreat into their cave, and so consequently, the ladies are starting to plan their next date, their next. When am I going to see him again? When am I going to hear from him again? And start thinking, oh, let's do this, let's do that. Thinking about these are the things that we can do, and the guys recognize that, and even if he likes you and intends to call you again, you may not hear from him for a week. Because he's gone into his cave, because he realizes that odds are he realizes that it was the wrong thing to do, and that things proceeded too quickly. So he needs time to process, and so when he doesn't call you the next day or text you the next day, don't be surprised. That's why, ladies, it's so important to wait. And guys, that's why it's so important to wait, because there's going to be all kinds of communication problems that you just initiated by having sex way too soon. And let's see. Let me try to get. Oh, let me try to. And Terry says. Let's see, Addie and hang on one second. Let me see if there's Addie and Terry say they can't see Teresa, so there must be something in the connection, or maybe in Teresa's connection that is preventing that. I don't know. Hi, Elizabeth. Thanks for joining in. And Sharon, thank you for joining in. And Sharon says, know the person first before you really get involved. Absolutely. And that's what we're talking about tonight, that you need to develop the intellectual, spiritual, and emotional connection before sex becomes involved. You're going to have a physical attraction, but again, the longer you can wait, the stronger your connection will become. The other aspect there is that if you hop into bed too soon, and you then sometime shortly thereafter you discover that this really wasn't the right relationship for him, then you've got that guilt of, I should never have slept with him or slept with her. So it's so important to understand. And there's a biological stuff going on, especially with guys, that we start losing our ability to learn about you ladies once we've had sex. It's just the brain shuts down. So you have to keep that in mind. We all have to keep that in mind. It takes a very strong personality to move beyond the physical connection, to continue to develop an intellectual, spiritual, and emotional connection. And that's not always going to happen. And so pretty soon after the infatuation wears off, you wake up one day and say, is this all, is the physical aspect of this relationship all that we've got? I don't know him. We don't go to church together, or we're not on the same page spiritually. I don't feel anything really, any real connection to him. So you start running into that, and that can actually start to happen relatively quickly, depending on how quickly the infatuation wears off. But again, that can last up to 2 years. And the last thing you want to do is wake up one morning after you've been dating that long, or even gotten married, and saying, yeah, this isn't really working for me. It looks like Teresa's found everybody. I don't know if she's or can see everybody. I'm assuming that's what that means. And Shar says, Al and I walked every day and typically started out before sunrise. We always stopped on the trail at sunrise for a hug and a kiss. Just a ritual. Nice. I like that. That's an awesome way to spend a little time together and connect first thing in the morning. Um, and Terry says she can see Teresa now. Uh, And Teresa says, "Is it wrong to want to see what it's like to have sex with someone when you only were with one man? I'm only human, and I am saved by grace." Yeah, it's yes, it's wrong. It's it sex is not supposed to be like going out and buying a car or squeezing the produce at the grocery store. And Teresa also adds that she was married for 32 years and not getting any younger. Yeah, I understand that, but the reality is that uh, that it's not. I don't know. That's such a loaded question for me. Yeah, it's not like test driving a car because the while it may be all fun and games in the moment, you start to develop emotional connections. Even if you want to deny it, you start developing emotional connections with somebody, even at a very very high level, and it it just it just becomes problematic later on because when the relationship ends, because if you're sleeping with somebody just for the sex, it will end because the odds are so much against you that it would be the right relationship to begin with. You end up spending excess time with somebody that's wrong for you, and all because of a physical connection. And so it's far better to wait and to to hold off on those things until after you have developed a long term relationship. And I still say that my final answer is that you still should wait until marriage. The reality is that because of the society we live in, odds are that's not going to happen. And I've had ladies tell me that they had no intentions of waiting until marriage because they came from a marriage where things were non-functional with their husbands, and they wanted to make sure everything worked beforehand. Well, that's one way of looking at it, but the reality is I'm going to stand with my recommendations. And am I perfect in doing this? No. I want to make that crystal clear. I'm not perfect. I'm just stating the way it should happen. Um, Teresa says, "Well, you could have thought about it." No, I understand. And Sharon says, "Would you leave if your boyfriend said it's either sex or we say goodbye?" Yeah, I would say goodbye. Because all he's interested in is the sex. It's not something that's of mutual desire. And if you're dating somebody that gives you that ultimatum, then there's a lack of respect there and a lack of understanding of what a healthy relationship should look like. And if he's a good guy, he'll understand and say, "Okay, I get it." But to uh, give you an ultimatum on hopping into bed, no, just say, "Okay, bye." It's because again, he doesn't respect you. He's only looking out for what's right for him. He's not. He's not going to be a long-term relationship. As soon as he gets bored with the sex that you're having, then he's on to the next one. So I would say better off to say goodbye now and not not give yourself away to the wrong person. And Paul says, I concur with you, Rick, about waiting. Again, it's about respecting the other person, and you're welcome, Sharon. And that's exactly right. We all have to set our boundaries. And Sharon, I'm using you as an example. That when you say no, I'm waiting until marriage, then that should be your boundary. And anybody that wants to chip away at your boundaries is going to it obviously does not respect you enough to adhere by those boundaries, and they're operating or they're dating you from a selfish perspective. They're looking out for their needs, but they're not looking out for your needs. And so consequently, what happens later on down the road when other things, are there going to be financial issues that he's going to look out for himself and not for you? There's a whole hornet's nest in there that if he's giving you ultimatums already on sex, then it's time to move on. And Addie says, I waited years with a man I was friends with, and then we finally did kiss. It was like kissing my brother. It was such a disappointment and letdown. Yeah, and kissing is one of those things that either they do it well or they don't. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if there's, at least for me, I'm not sure if there's any middle ground there. And to be realistic, if you don't enjoy kissing somebody, that's hard. It takes a lot of it. It literally takes a lot of the physical attraction away. So and I'm not saying not to kiss. I'm just saying be careful about how passionate you get, and the passionate kisses. Be careful about how long they last, because they get, if they're a good kisser, the passions arouse, or you get aroused, and pretty soon clothes are falling off, and it's too late. And so. But I agree. That's a great comment, Addie. It's just everybody kisses differently, and it's important that your soulmate is a good kisser to you. Teresa says it does make it more exciting to wait, because you have this buildup of excitement and makes a woman feel special and more like a lady who your man really does love and care enough to wait. Absolutely. And then she says, "Yep, don't touch me." So anyway, it's those are some of the you guys have some great comments today. I like, and great questions. But there is more than one characteristic. You have to build a strong foundation for a healthy relationship. Anybody can start a relationship on a sexual connection or a physical connection. That's easy to do. We can all do that. The trick is to, or the key, not the trick. The key is to develop all four cornerstones of a strong relationship. Then to make sure they have all their must-haves and deal breakers. And then, as we talked about a couple of weeks ago, I believe that speaking similar love languages is so important. And then finally, the chemistry. We can have sexual chemistry, but no intellectual chemistry or spiritual chemistry, or where the chemistry is the thing that just really interweaves or weaves its way around all aspects of the relationship, and just it's the glue that holds it together. As I've shared numerous times, that life happens, and it's it's the emotional connection, the chemistry that holds you together in the tough times. Life always throws us curveballs, and or at least one of you are going to be thrown a curveball, and the other one's there to be supportive of you if it's an extraordinary or soulmate relationship. It's because you're both there to support each other. You're both there to enhance each other's lives, and not to take away or detract from each other's lives. It's a it needs to be a society, not a society. It needs to be a relationship built on respect and trust, and but it needs to have all these other components for it all to come together and be healthy. And Teresa says, I think one of the biggest things too is putting God first. Absolutely. Without God in your relationship, it really is a weak foundation. And I've shared this on a number of these podcasts or these events, live Facebook lives, that my opinion is a Christian relationship or a Christian relationship is a much stronger foundation than any other form of relationship or spiritual connection. So it's my personal opinion, and from my experience, when you share that, it just you when you're on the same page there, it just works so well. And you have God there to help guide you and keep you focused on what's important, on each other. And so it's just nothing like having somebody in your corner rooting for you all the time. So anyway, what other questions or comments? These have been coming in hot and heavy here for a while. I'm all caught up. What's up with you guys? Come on. Um, so the physical aspect is fun, but you need to develop the intellectual, spiritual, emotional, and the physical connection. It's yeah, Teresa was busy typing here. Teresa says it's a mess without him, but just because a man says he loves God, ladies, please make sure his actions show. Oh yeah, show it. I was abused, and he said he was a Christian, but his fruits did not show it. Yeah, Teresa, that's an awesome point. I can't tell you how many people that I've in the writing of my book, I specifically remember a story of a woman that told me that her the guy she was dating didn't go to church, but said he'd be happy to go to church whether he was a Christian. He just didn't practice, and while they were dating, he went to church with her every week, and then they moved in together, and he stopped going quite as often, and pretty soon they're into their relationship for 4 or 5 years, and he's not going to church at all. And she's back where at the beginning, saying that she's alone again in church. And it wasn't long after that he left, and so you really have to look at their for lack of better terms, their spiritual credentials. Do they go to church regularly? What church are they a member of? And when you go to his church or her church, does she know people there? I mean, that's going to be a true sign of whether they actually participate in church or not. Hey, Kathy, thanks for joining in. And Kathy says, and there are many types of abuse. There absolutely are, and it can be anything from physical to verbal to emotional, and variations of or combinations of all of those. And so it's and the minute you feel the abuse, it's time to leave. That's a one time off the cuff remark or nasty remark, maybe. But if it happens more than once, you should be out the door. Any physical touching, from an abuse perspective, should be a one and done event. And this is where you all have to have boundaries and learn to say no. That you can't expect an apology and everything to change. A leopard does not change its spots, and consequently, when you're with somebody like that, they beg and plead you to come back, and you fall for it. If you go back a second time, I guarantee you're going to be abused again, and it's going to be worse the second time around. And it's harder and harder to extract yourself from those relationships. So the first time it happens, you have to be aware. You have to set your boundaries and say, "No, I'm out." And there's no ifs, ands, or buts. Teresa says they can go to church. They can go to church too, but at home, another story of lies and pain. Absolutely, yeah. Just because the church is full of the church is full of sinners, and it hopefully you find somebody that recognizes that and is working on themselves. But there are a lot of people that go for show as opposed to real action. And Paul says, my late wife used to say, actions speak louder than words. They absolutely do, Paul. And Teresa says, I pray no one knows what it feels like to be owned by a person. Absolutely. And that's one of those things and that's why I say the first sign of trouble should be your one and done. The first time it happens, you need to set that boundary to be able to step out of that relationship and say, no, I'm not going back. You had your one chance, you blew it. There should be no such thing as second or third chances. That is something that just doesn't fly in my book. And the problem with giving second and third chances is in spite of the fact that it's wrong, you keep developing deeper and deeper connections with somebody, and it becomes harder and harder to extricate yourself from the relationship. And I've said this many times that it's the pain of staying is always less than the pain of leaving. But the pain of staying is permanent, where the pain of leaving is temporary. And so you have to think about the long-term consequences. Yes, it's the emotional struggle is much harder up front to walk away. But do you want to struggle with that pain and abuse and whatever, physical or emotional or whatever it is? Do you want to continue to struggle with that for the rest of your life? Are you happy in that relationship? And that's what you have to ask yourself. Am I happy here? If you're not happy, especially if it's a non-marriage relationship, but even in a marriage, if there's any form of abuse, God doesn't condone that. He didn't put us in marriage to be miserable. We're supposed to be. This is supposed to be we're supposed to be a comfort to each other and a help to each other. And if we can't do that, then it's the wrong relationship. And that's what all of this, all of the stuff that I teach, all of the stuff that I share with you is designed to help you focus on making better decisions, smarter decisions up front. And I contend that if you follow along, that generally within 30 days or less, you can tell whether somebody's worth pursuing or not. And then that doesn't mean that things won't come apart later on, but what it does mean is that you'll prevent your or keep you'll prevent yourself from wasting a lot of time with a lot of wrong people by dragging it out for months and months and months. If you're paying attention up front, you know what your boundaries are, or you should know what they are. If you don't, talk to me. We can get you a copy of a book. We can get you involved in Dating Made Simple Academy and working through issues there. Hey Susan, thanks for joining in. And let's see. Missed a couple here. Teresa says, "What happens if the person you're dating the whole time is kind and does not show bad side till you're married?" I contend that and there are a few actors that will be able to get away with that, but I think if you're truly paying attention, I think if you really know what your boundaries are, you'll start to see telltale signs of problems before you walk down the aisle. You know, and then she says, how do you get them to show what they truly are? Well, and a lot of it has to do with boundaries, and I find that especially with people pleasers, they tend to let people walk right over their boundaries. And if you set your boundaries, and your boundaries can be as simple as your must-have and your deal-breaker list. When somebody starts to start chipping away at your must-have list. Well, I have all these other things. Why, I'm a good guy. Why won't you accept me? Well, what they're trying to do is they're trying to be with you for their selfish reasons. They're not taking your wants, needs, and desires into consideration. It's all about them. That would be a huge red flag for me. And I've had those conversations with women that you meet somebody online or you start dating somebody, and when they start arguing with you or trying to convince you that your list is wrong, or your must-have list or your deal breakers are wrong, it should be a huge red flag flying that says, yeah, he or she doesn't respect me. They don't respect my values. They don't respect my wants, needs, and desires. So there's a whole gamut there that if you're not paying attention, they'll just walk right over you and walk into your life and literally take over and make a mess of it. So Teresa, I hope that satisfies that question. It's one of those things that I firmly believe that if you're paying attention, if you're watching, and if he tries to chip away at your boundaries, just that should be an instant no. That should be an instant next. It's because the last thing you want to do is end up in a relationship where you end up abused or if nothing else, even just less than extraordinary. And she says, my heart falls for people too fast, which sucks because I just love everyone, which is very painful that very painful that I caused myself. What do you tell a person? How do you guard your heart? Well, that's why, number one, that's why, and you're in the Dating Made Simple Academy, and I hope you're going through it and going through the lessons. That's what we're talking about later this week on our Zoom call. We're talking about the must-have and deal-breaker lists. Doesn't make any difference. You can fall in love as often as you want. You have to recognize that you fall easily, and you have to revert back to your must-have and deal-breaker list to make sure that they have everything that you want. And if they don't, the first word out of your mouth should be next. It's that simple. It's not easy, but it is simple. And because they may have some really good characteristics or qualities that you absolutely love, and even if they're a decent person and not abusive, if they don't have everything that you're looking for, it's time to move on. Because every soulmate or extraordinary couple that I've talked to has told me the exact same thing, almost verbatim, that their mate has brought more to the table than they ever could have imagined. So consequently, you need to pay attention to your boundaries and not cave in on your boundaries. And I'm guessing, based on past conversations with you, that's what's happening. And Sharon says, that's why I'm staying single. Well, and that's okay. If that's your choice, that's fine. Um, and yeah, it's okay. Uh, and Terry says, keep your eyes wide open. Absolutely. And Susan says, drop them like a hot potato if they don't measure up. Absolutely. Susan knows. She just wrote me and said that she's with her soulmate. So, and I want to congratulate you, Susan, in person, live. We shared a couple of messages, but so if you don't respect yourself, don't expect others to respect you, or don't expect the people you're dating to respect you. You teach people how to treat you. And Susan K says, take your time. You aren't desperate. Wait for the right one. Oh, they're flying in here. It's hard when you really want to be in love and all that comes with it. You just you just have to be patient and not fall for everyone that comes along. That's the whole point, Teresa. You have to understand that what you're looking for is a needle in a haystack, or a diamond in the rough. And unless you're willing to wait and search and do the all the things necessary to find that extraordinary relationship, you're always going to end up in the wrong relationship. And Terry says, I don't want to settle till I find that one who can bring more to the table than I ever expected. Yeah, I guarantee you won't be settling for that one. That's gonna be a gimme. That's gonna be that's my one. And Susan says, thank you. I couldn't have found him. Oh, thank you so much. Couldn't have found him without your advice. Well, I appreciate it, and I'm humbled that I was a small part of that process. You did the work. You did the looking, and that was awesome. I'm so excited. I'm really excited for you. And let's see what I do here. Teresa says, I am thinking about my age too, but I guess God will have someone for me. Yeah, and don't let, and I've said this to a number of people recently, don't let age spook you into settling. You know, think of how many years you know, and we all have different numbers of years in our mind about how long we're going to live. You know, I'm looking at probably another 20, 25 years. I'd rather spend the next 20 years looking and 5 years with that extraordinary person, as opposed to the next 25 years with mediocre. And I did that once. I spent 25 years with my ex, and it wasn't an extraordinary relationship. Don't misunderstand me. You know, we had some good times. There were some great things that came from that relationship, but it wasn't extraordinary. And I don't want to do that again. And I'm hoping that after 32, I think you said 32 years, Teresa, I hope you don't want to do that again. You know, don't be in a hurry. Don't be racing to get into another relationship. And that's too many times we get lonely and we say, "Oh, I got to be in a relationship. I got to find somebody." No, don't do that. Learn to enjoy your own company. Learn to be happy with yourself, and then you'll put yourself in a position of power dating, I guess, is for lack of better terms. You control the situation. You recognize that you don't have to be in a relationship. You recognize that you're okay alone. It doesn't necessarily mean that you want to be alone, but you're comfortable and you're okay there. It doesn't mean you're not going to get lonely from time to time. And we all do. I do. You know, I would love nothing better than to be in a relationship right now, but it's not it's not where I'm at. It's not what's happening, and I'm not going to settle. I'm not going to be less not going to be with somebody that's less than my soulmate. Um, no, I don't think you'll die alone, Teresa. And I'm not a matchmaker, so I can't do that. Hey, Brandy, thanks for joining in. I went on so many first dates, and before I found the one. Keep trying. That's awesome to hear, Brandy. Keep trying. If you need a break from dating, take a break. Take care of you. Absolutely. There's another example. Brandy is a perfect example. You know, in waiting, in her advice. You know, don't just take it from me. Take it from Susan Kay and Brandy. And Teresa says, "Well, I know sex is not everything, but hey, it would be nice to see what it's like with a man who really does love you." Well, that will come in time. Just be patient. And Terry says, "I started out in a hurry since I was widowed at 59. When I turned 62, I thought I needed to hurry, but soon realized I needed my time to learn who I am." Absolutely. And you know, and for all of you, you know, whether you're widowed or whether you're divorced, you have to take time to recover from the loss of those excuse me, from the loss of those relationships. That takes time. You have to peel back the layer after layer after layer to find out who you are, and to relearn what's important to you, because we all morph and change for our partners in a relationship. And that doesn't happen overnight. And for those of you that are widowed, it typically, in my observation, especially for women, it takes about 5 years to really peel back all the layers and be really emotionally ready and secure and being able to being ready to date. You know, men tend to push that a little bit sooner. It's because we're wired differently and we tend to push emotions behind us. Brandy says, "I've been dating my one for over a year now. Follow Rick's advice." Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And Shar says, "How old will Rick be in 20 years?" I want to tune in then. Rick will be 85 in 20 years. So yeah, I turned 65 this year, and that's Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid, or yeah, Medicare, I guess. Just all that stuff. Um, but that's, and God willing, I'm going to be here that long, and enjoying life, enjoying talking with you all on a daily or on a weekly basis, and then it'll be, rather than Coach Rick or it'll be Grandpa Rick, and hey, I'm already a grandpa. So Brandy says I've been dating. Uh, oh, it works. Yeah, okay. Thank you, Brandy. I appreciate that. Um, what do you say to people who say God should be enough? Well, and God is enough. If But God designed us to be in a relationship, not just with Him, but with each other. And He that's God created Adam and He created Eve. So we have that natural, inborn, innate desire to be with someone. And now there are people that and my mother was one of them. When she and my dad got divorced, she never remarried, and she never even dated. So she gave it a shot, and that was that for her. That was her one and only. And only you can determine how how strong your desire is to be with someone. Only you can determine that. You and God. And that's you know nobody else should determine that for you. Um, let's see. And Susan says, a strong personal relationship with Jesus helps me all the time. There you go. Thank you, Susan K. I appreciate that. And so, and when you have that strong relationship with God, just trust Him and His timing. He, excuse me, I got to take a quick sip here, and then we're going to wrap it up. But it says, "Thank you for inspiring me." I think that's more of the other ladies that are inspiring tonight, Terry. So, but it's yeah. I'm just trying to rely on God to bring you the right person, but don't. But you can't do it by sitting at home. You have to be out and about. You have to be social. You have to be meeting people. Whether it's online or whatever, however you're meeting. Social clubs or groups, charity events. There are so many different ways. And it's he may be waiting to bring you someone because you have lessons to learn, or he's your soulmate still has lessons to learn. So don't be so wrapped up that you have to have this relationship now. It's one of those things that it will all happen at the right time. And Susan K, God bless you all, and good night. Good night, Susan. Susan K. I appreciate you tuning in, and with that, I am going to wrap it up because we're a wee bit long here, and I appreciate you all being here. I love you all. Thank you for joining in and all your great comments. And I will see you next Monday. I hope you have a great and blessed week, and also have a great weekend next weekend. So we'll see you next Monday for Monday Mastery.